Good morning, my brothers and sisters. I love you, and I love that we can gather here, that no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what conflict the world is experiencing, we can experience peace here with one another. But as we talked about last week, our desire is not just to experience peace, but to share peace, to be peacemakers in the world, to take peace to our schools, to take peace to our workplaces, to take peace to our neighborhoods, to take peace to our families. But as we said last week, this is the season where we sometimes talk about peace the most, but experience it the least. And the fact that that statement resonates so much with most of us, I think it shows us something. Here's what I think maybe that it shows us. It shows us that if we're willing to go beyond the superficiality and the sentimentality of the season, we might find that our neighbors are longing for something that we as Christians can offer them. Our neighbors are longing for something. They're longing, and you, if you're a Christian, you have a truth that they need, and they're longing for it. In fact, a lot of the songs that we sing this time of year, they reveal that longing. And if we'll just listen to what the world is saying, I mean, you can walk, this time of year is so interesting to me. You can walk into a secular store, a place of business, and you can hear music playing on the speakers that reveal not only a longing for Jesus, but why people are longing for Jesus. Here's a few examples. If you're not familiar, you probably are with some of these songs. A song that I've heard several times already this year, Stevie Wonder's Someday at Christmas. Have you ever stopped and listened to these words? He says, someday at Christmas, men won't be boys, playing with bombs like kids play with toys. One warm December, our hearts will see a world where men are free. Someday at Christmas, there'll be no wars when we have learned what Christmas is for. When we have found what life's really worth, there'll be peace on earth. Someday at Christmas, we'll see a land with no hungry children, no empty hand. One happy morning, people will share our world where people care. Does that seem out of place to you? You might hear those words and think, why are we singing about bombs and wars and hunger and poverty in a Christmas song? You might think that's inappropriate or out of place, but I would say nothing could be more appropriate. This is why we are talking about what we're talking about, because the world needs this and is longing for this. Or how about the song, "O Holy Night"? One of the verses says, "Truly he has taught us to love one another. His law is love and his gospel is peace." His law is love and his gospel is peace. "Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise we. Let all within us praise his holy name. Christ is the Lord. O praise his name forever. His power and glory evermore proclaim." Now, do we really understand how his gospel is peace? How the gospel is peace? Do we understand how the good news about Jesus means that every chain not only will break, but should break now? How the gospel, the proclamation of what we believe and hold as our core truth, means that not only will oppression cease, but all oppression should cease now. Do we understand why and how the gospel is peace? Sometimes I think that we have so diluted the gospel that we're really not sure. why and how the gospel is peace, how this is the gospel of peace, and why it means that we can not only know that peace is coming, but begin to experience peace even now. I think the book of Isaiah can really help us with this. I probably tried to pack in, I'll warn you ahead of time, I've tried to pack in too much into this morning's lesson, but we're going to do our best to kind of walk through some of Isaiah. Because about 500 years before Jesus, about 2,500 years ago, there were Jewish people who were exiled and enslaved in the land of Babylon. They had been exiled from their land. Their home of Jerusalem had been destroyed. They were enslaved and exiled in Babylon. And they were longing, as people are today, they were longing for peace. And they opened up their Bibles and they read from the prophet Isaiah. And Isaiah brought them comfort and hope, because Isaiah said someday the Messiah is coming. And here's how he described the Messiah. Look at Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. These words brought comfort and hope to enslaved and exiled people, because they believed that this peace was coming through the Prince of Peace, and that he would sit on the throne of his father David, that his rule and his reign would bring peace not only for them, but for the whole world. And so I specifically want to focus on the section of Isaiah, that's Isaiah chapter 40 through about chapter 55. And this section in particular is the announcement that salvation is coming. Salvation is coming. And that God is going to partner with an unlikely partner, Cyrus, the king of Persia, and he's going to punish Babylon for their sins against his people, and he's going to liberate his people. He's going to free them from slavery. They're going to get to go back home to Jerusalem, and Jerusalem will be redeemed and restored to her former glory. So Isaiah, he pictures a day where this peace will reign. He pictures a day where the peace that people were longing for will come true. So look at Isaiah chapter 52 and verse 7. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace, who brings good news of happiness and publishes salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. I mean, imagine if you're enslaved and exiled, and in a sense, we are. In a sense, we're longing for this, and God's people have always been longing for this, and how beautiful and wonderful it would be for someone to come and to herald this good news and to say, your God reigns, and that peace is here, who publishes peace. This word peace in Hebrew, the Hebrew word, you might know it, is shalom. And shalom means not only safety and security, protection from conflict, but it means wholeness and completeness and contentment. It's not only about what you're lacking, like you're lacking conflict and you're not being hurt or harmed, but it's also about having wholeness. It's about what you have, what you're experiencing. And Isaiah looks forward to the future and he says, this day is coming where there will be feet who carry this good news, gospel. That's the gospel. It was gospel 500 years before Jesus. It was gospel during the days of Jesus. It was gospel in the years following the ascension of Jesus. It's gospel now. Your God reigns. That's the good news. God reigns. God is king. And because he reigns, because he's king, he offers you shalom. He offers you peace. See, that's the good news that was proclaimed to you and the good news that we get to proclaim to the world. This is how we participate in peacemaking, is by telling the world the good news. The good news that God reigns through and in Jesus, and that he offers the world shalom. He offers the world peace, wholeness, completeness, contentment, safety, security. Look at verse 8. The voice of your watchmen, they lift up their voice. Together they sing for joy. For eye to eye they see the return of the Lord to Zion. Break forth together into singing, you waste places of Jerusalem. For the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem. Now, Babylon would be, or rather Jerusalem would be completely destroyed by Babylon. I can't even imagine what that would feel like. To have not only your hometown destroyed, that would be bad enough, but to have the city where God reigned as king in and through the temple, for that city to be demolished, to be leveled. And Isaiah looks into the future and he says, redemption is coming. Now, as you read these promises, the promises that the waste places of Jerusalem would be rebuilt, they'd be redeemed, they'd be restored, they'd be renewed. Like, does this come true when the exiles, hundreds of years before Jesus, go back to Jerusalem? Zerubbabel leads them back to Jerusalem. They rebuild the walls, they rebuild the temple, they dwell again in Jerusalem. Do the words of Isaiah come true then? Or do they come true hundreds of years later when Jesus is born? And the answer is yes, both. It's true in both. And the prophecies often work this way, where they're multifaceted, multi-layered, where there's sort of an already to them and a not yet. So there's an already sense that when the exiles return and when they rebuild the temple and when they rebuild the walls, there's a sense in which Isaiah's prophecies come true. But there's also a sense in which they ultimately came true, where the Lord returned to Jerusalem. The Lord returned to the temple when? When the Lord returned in the body, the human body of a little baby named Jesus. And when his parents brought him into the temple, the Lord had returned to Jerusalem. Which is why there was a prophetess, her name was Anna, and she had been waiting for this day. And then she proclaimed that the prophecies of Isaiah were coming true when little baby Jesus came into the temple. It says in Luke chapter 2 and verse 38, coming up at that very hour, Anna began to give thanks to God and to speak of him to all who were waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. So these Jews had come back to Jerusalem. They'd rebuilt the city, they'd rebuilt the temple, they'd rebuilt the walls, and they'd been living there for hundreds of years. But they still knew, we don't have shalom yet. We don't have peace yet. There's an already sense like, yes, God has delivered us, God has redeemed us, God has brought us peace, but not as fully as we're waiting for. We're still longing for that. And see, that's always the case, isn't it? Even now, on this side of the birth of Jesus, even now on this side of the cross, even on this side of the ascension, we can say, God has already done these things. God has already brought us peace. God has already redeemed us. He's already renewed us. But then we can also say, but we're still longing for peace, aren't we? We're still longing for redemption and renewal and reconciliation. And there's a sense in which they're already true, but there's also a sense in which they're not yet true. So Isaiah says, verse 10, the Lord has bared his holy arm before the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our God. In other words, Isaiah sees a time when the whole world will see just how strong and powerful our God is and his deliverance. In fact, I love Eugene Peterson's paraphrase in the Message. He says, God has rolled up his sleeves. All the nations can see his holy muscled arm. Everyone from one end of the earth to the other sees him at work doing his salvation work. Now, when did God bare his holy muscled arm, like roll up his sleeve and show the whole world how strong and powerful he is? Well, he did it when he brought Israel out of Egyptian slavery. He did it again when he brought them out of Babylonian exile. He did it when he brought the exiles home. And he did it ultimately on the cross, when he delivered the whole world from sin and suffering. And he will do it again when Jesus comes again. God will roll up his sleeve and show the whole world his holy muscled arm and show the whole world his saving, delivering work. Look at verse 11. Isaiah goes on to tell the world about his servant. Isaiah 53, you may be familiar with this passage. Isaiah 53, he talks about the suffering servant through whom God will do his saving work. God will do this saving work through a suffering servant who will be pierced for our transgressions. And that this suffering servant will suffer and will ultimately die and be buried. But even after his suffering and his burial and his death, Isaiah says, 53 in verse 11, out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Now, how is it? Now, most people, as they read this, they thought that God was just talking about Israel, that Israel would fulfill these promises. But Israel could never fulfill these promises, could never be the suffering servant that would suffer to deliver the world from their sin and their iniquities. And how could the servant suffer and then die and be buried, and then after his death and burial, he could see and be satisfied? It's only if God raises him from the dead. And so Isaiah can see a time in the future where peace and deliverance come because God sends his servant to suffer and die on behalf of the people. But even after his suffering and death, he will be raised to see and be satisfied, and he will make many to be accounted as righteous, and he will bear their iniquities. That's how he's going to reconcile people to God. And this is how the Messiah brings peace, is that through his suffering, many are accounted as righteous, and he will bear their iniquities. Look at the next chapter, chapter 54 and verse 9. The Lord declares this: as a result of what the suffering servant has done, the Lord can say to the people, this is like the days of Noah to me. As I swore that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth, so I have sworn that I will not be angry with you and will not rebuke you. For the mountains may depart and the hills be removed, but my steadfast love shall not depart from you, and my covenant of peace shall not be removed, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. See, this is what it looks like to have peace with the Lord. For the Lord to say to you, because of what the servant has done on your behalf, I will no longer be angry with you. I will no longer rebuke you. We will have a covenant of peace. Does that sound good? I mean, what else could change our joy? What else could rob us of joy if this is true? If because of what the suffering servant has done, and we know that to be Jesus, because he was pierced for our iniquities, because he suffered on our behalf, and because of him we are accounted as righteous, that God could say to us, we're good. We have peace. I'm not angry with you. I love you. I have compassion on you. If this is true, then we have peace now. Again, there's a sense in which these things came true when the exiles went back to Jerusalem. But they knew they're not ultimately true yet. We're still waiting. We're still longing for peace with God. And there's a sense in which they ultimately came true when Jesus came the first time. And there's still a sense in which we're still longing for peace. But we can already have it because we know that this is true, that God is saying to us, I will not be angry with you. I will not rebuke you. My covenant of peace shall not be removed. The Lord has compassion on you. See, and if you know that that's true, if you have that peace that passes understanding, it not only changes your relationship with God, it changes every other relationship in your life. See, this is the plea of the good news, the gospel of peace. Here's the plea that God is inviting the whole world to. Isaiah chapter 55 and verse 1. Come, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And he who has no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread? And your labor, you spend your labor for that which does not satisfy. Listen diligently to me. This is the Lord talking. Listen diligently to me and eat what is good and delight yourselves in rich food. See, this time of year makes it obvious, doesn't it? All the rushing around, all the buying and buying and buying and buying and buying. It makes it obvious that we are surrounded by people, and sometimes we are people who are thirsty, who are hungry, but we are spending our money on things that are not bread, and we are spending our labor on things that do not satisfy. We're hungry, we're thirsty, we're longing for peace, and we think that all the stuff we're buying will satisfy us, will fill us. And the Lord says to you, it won't. It won't. It never has, and it never will. I mean, maybe we all ought to stop and ask ourselves, what are you spending your money on and spending your labor on that doesn't satisfy, that isn't bread? Houses, cars, stuff under a tree. Maybe it's things like politics. Maybe it's things like chasing fads and trends. Maybe it's entertainment. We spend our money on things that are not bread, and we spend our labor on things that do not satisfy, when all along God is pleading with us, listen diligently to me and eat what is good. This is the shalom he's offering us. Yes, there's a sense in which we'll ultimately have that shalom, ultimately have that peace only when Jesus comes again. But we can begin to experience it now. But in order to experience it now, we have to stop chasing things that do not satisfy, buying things that are not bread, and receive from the Lord without cost, without money. The cost has already been paid. Receive from Him water and wine and milk and bread and peace and safety and security and abundance. See, this is the message that gave hope and comfort to people who were exiled and enslaved 2,500 years ago. And it's still good news today. It's good news for us, but it's also good news for our neighbors. Your neighbors are longing for this truth. And if you're a Christian, you know it. It's already yours. You've already come to the Lord and received from Him without cost. This is the message that the world needs to hear. And so how can we participate with Jesus in being peacemakers, in spreading peace, in making peace? Well, I would say this, that effective peacemakers are those who promote the gospel of peace with their words and their lives. That's part of how we make peace. We make peace in the world by promoting the gospel of peace with our words and our lives. In our schools, our workplaces, in our families, in our neighborhoods, we make peace by helping people to understand that the peace they're longing for, the shalom they're longing for, the satisfaction they're longing for, the safety they're longing for, the security they're longing for, the joy they're longing for, the hope they're longing for is only found in Jesus Christ. And that's true today and will ultimately be true when Jesus comes again. There's a story that I wanted to share with you this morning. There was a monk about 404 AD. His name was Telemachus. And Telemachus, he traveled to Rome, where in Rome they were still killing one another in the arena. Gladiators were fighting to the death, as they had been doing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And Telemachus went to the arena, and he was so appalled by the way that human beings were harming and hurting and killing one another, that Telemachus jumped into the arena and came between two fighting gladiators and pleaded with them, preached to them to stop doing what they were doing. Sadly, not only did the gladiators, but also the people in the arena turned against Telemachus and killed him. But his story reached the ears of the emperor, and the emperor finally, after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, once and for all, put an end to the gladiatorial games. Because one believer in Jesus was willing to proclaim the gospel of peace, not just with his words, but with his life. He helped to make peace. And that's what we are all called to do, to be peacemakers, to proclaim the gospel of peace with our words, to tell people the good news. Your God reigns. God is in charge of the world through Jesus. Jesus is King. And we proclaim that not only with our words, but we live it out with our lives, regardless of the cost. And that's part of how we make peace. Effective peacemakers promote the gospel of peace with our words and our lives. Maybe there's somebody here this morning and you're ready to commit yourself to King Jesus, to declare and pledge your loyalty and allegiance to him through baptism, to receive the forgiveness of your sins, to be accounted as righteous because of his suffering, because of his death, because of what he's done for you, to receive from God without cost the milk, the wine, the water, to receive from him the things that really do satisfy and fill, to receive peace that passes understanding. If you're ready to commit yourself to Jesus and receive those gifts, today would be a great day to do that. Or maybe you've already made that decision, but you need to recommit yourself to Jesus. Or maybe you need to recommit your life to proclaiming this message of peace, to proclaiming the gospel of peace with your words and your life, to partner with Jesus in being peacemakers. Or maybe right now you're just experiencing the pain and suffering of being in this present evil age. And like all of us, you are longing for the day when Jesus comes. And you need your brothers and sisters in Christ to surround you with care and with love and with prayer. We would love to do nothing more than that. Our shepherds would love to meet with you in the prayer room, or you can come forward now. As together we stand and sing this song.